What's up, everybody? It's your boy Norm Radd 89 here with another review series, a Radd movie review series. As this one, I had a poll going on my channel in the community tab for my YouTube community, where you all were able to vote on what the next series of films or franchise that y'all wanted me to talk about. I had Wrong Turn on there, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Reanimator franchise, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre won out, which is kind of cool, to be honest, because I'm a slasher fan. I love slasher films, so diving into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is not going to upset me at all. And I haven't reviewed all these films on the channel yet, so that's really exciting as well. And it's kind of going into the hot spring, summer months, and I feel like that's the perfect time to kind of talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre because most of these films predominantly take place during July and August and all that stuff, the hottest months of the year. So let's get into this rad movie review for the very first film from 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Roll it. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is directed by Tobe Hooper, and this is from 1974, and definitely one of the most influential, iconic slasher films of all time. I've talked to so many friends and horror fans and seen so many videos, and a lot of people think this is the one of the greatest horror films of all time or the scariest horror film of all time. And I think what Tobe Hooper was able to craft with such just minimal effort, you know what I mean, in terms of there's not really, when you think about it in your mind and after you watch this film, there's really not a lot of gore in here. There's not a lot of crazy kills or crazy effects or anything like that. It's more of a vibe, an experience. That's the best way to describe the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is when you watch this film, it just puts you in a certain headspace and of just where your mind is like in this world. And that's what's kind of amazing is that Tobe Hooper was able to do that. And that's what my biggest positive with this film is that was what Tobe Hooper was able to do with having, like I said, very little gore, very little, kills on there. There's no like crazy dismemberments on screen. Like it says Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And when you think of that title in your mind, you contemplate so many more crazy kills and so many more gory moments. And that's not really in this film. Another thing I got to praise about this film is Tobe Hooper introducing us to one of the craziest families of all time, where we have Leatherface, who is one of the most iconic slashers that I adore. I mean, I've dressed up as Leatherface. My own son has dressed up as Leatherface for Halloween. He was 6 years old when he actually asked me to dress up as Leatherface because I introduced my kids to horror movies way too early in their life. But, that's me. That's my parenting style. So when it comes to me, like, I love that character. It's such an iconic character. Then we also have Drayton Sawyer, the cook, and the hitchhiker. So, with Tobe Hooper introducing us to one of the most just interesting and crazy families that we would eventually have in horror history, and we would get so many iterations and versions of them in future films. Tobe Hooper really did start some amazing stuff with this film. And also I want to praise the cinematography. The cinematography in here is beautiful. I think this is one of those films that for sure when you watch it, you could see so many different shots that actually stand out. And I think it's really cool that they were able to bring Daniel Pearl, who was the cinematographer for this film. They ended up bringing him back for the remake, which I do. This is really no secret on the channel, but I do prefer the remake over this film. We will eventually get to that remake and talk about it. Don't bring out your pitchforks yet. But yeah, the cinematography in this film is gorgeous. It is amazing to look at. I also love the sound design and the sound mixing. There's so many, like, not really like score moments, just where like the chainsaw revs up or like certain sounds where it's like and like just these crazy effects and sounds that happen at certain moments that kind of create jump scares. That's what's like in this film, and I think they use it expertly where it's not like, oh, it's predictable. And it's kind of easy to say that about this film because this is one of the originators. I mean, when it comes to this film, I would say Psycho, Peeping Tom and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre are some of the original Americana slasher films that really started the craze and the franchises that would later, like Friday the 13th and Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, would take advantage of, is because of what these films, started. And as I said before, this is a film that is a total experience. It's a vibe. It's a film that's a horror movie that's going to totally suck you out of where you're at and put you in a certain headspace and a mind where you feel like you're actually trapped there in the heat of Texas being chased around by Leatherface. I mean, there are so many moments in here where you can just feel the heat and the visceral nature of what's going on in the film. And that's, to say credit to Tobe Hooper. He is amazing at being a director that is able to put you in the space of wherever his characters are at. I mean, he did Poltergeist, Funhouse. Like, there are so many awesome films that Tobe Hooper is responsible for. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which we are going to be talking about also on this review series. But yeah, he definitely crafted one of the craziest, most iconic Texas Chainsaw Massacre slasher films like that would ever hit the world, and it made a mark forever. But when it comes to this movie, I do have some mixed in negatives. And I know that's going to be something that's kind of like you want to tiptoe around or walk on eggshells around when you talk about this film. Because, like I said, this is heralded as one of the greatest of all times. And I can understand why. I could see that in my mind and see that in my eyes when I watch this movie. I understand why so many people love it and put it on this kind of pedestal. But for me, there are some things about this film that I do dislike. And when it comes to it, it's some of the characters. Like, there are characters in here. I don't need to have totally every character in a slasher film that I care about. But when it comes to this film, it has one of the most worst just characters that I hate to be around on screen, and it's Franklin. I think he is definitely one of a characters when you think of a horror movie genre. He's one of the worst characters to be around, and that's what I mean. It comes to this film, there's not too many characters to grab onto, whereas the remake, which we will eventually talk about it, but I just kind of want to brush on it a little bit, is I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was able to give us just as many characters in such a short amount of time, just like this film, but we actually care and like those characters, whereas the characters in this film, I don't really care about them as much. Another thing is going to be there is a lot of stuff in the third act that is just purely screaming. Like, the dialogue is literally just screaming. It is just Sally Harvenstein going apeshit screaming. And I know that's to make you feel like you're in that moment. You're terrified. She is completely alone, locked in this house with this family, a cannibalistic family, and just experiencing some crazy stuff. And she is just screaming over and over and over. And I feel like, yeah, it can kind of grate on your nerves a little bit. And also in the third act, there is also a chase scene where Leatherface is chasing her in the dark, which I think actually gets a little bit too long in the tooth, where it's cool at first, but it actually just gets to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of this. Like, I'm feeling like she needs to get caught soon or something needs to happen, but it's like he's still chasing her through the woods, and it's right after he kills Franklin. So yeah, there's some things in this film that I do have problems with, and I feel like there are later films in the franchise, either based on tone or where Tobe Hooper went with it, or either, like I said, the remake, certain things like that, that I feel like are better than this movie. But I completely understand people's loves for this film, and I love this film because, like, if it wasn't for this film, I wouldn't have gotten some of my favorites in the franchise. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a film that completely deserves its praise, its respect, and all the stuff that it gets. It's just, like I said, in my opinion, not one of my favorites in the franchise, but it's very, very high up there. But I want to get that clear right out of the way, so when we talk about the rating, y'all don't kind of freak out on me. So when it comes to this original film, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, it's going to get an 8 out of 10. Still a very, very solid rating. Definitely one of the greatest slasher films that's ever touched the planet Earth, and I'm so happy to be a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan, and the fact that we are going to be getting a new possible series, a new possible movie. This franchise is booming again, right off to where it should be, because I think there's so much to gain from this franchise. There's a lot to be said when it comes to these films. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not just a franchise about a slasher, crazy cannibalistic family. It's an Americana slasher film that's about kind of that era of where, you know, machinery and certain things were taking jobs away from families. And also when it comes to certain areas in Texas and just other places and other states, it doesn't have to be Texas, but where, like I said, those families are getting their jobs taken away from them by the bigger companies or, you know, AI or equipment and stuff, that they kind of get sectioned off and they have to fend for themselves. And that's something else that kind of represents what's going on in this film. So the Texas, like I said, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not just a gore fest. It's not just a slasher film. There's a lot to be said about this film, and it definitely deserves that 8 out of 10. But I could totally understand somebody having a 10 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, or this being their favorite film of all time when it comes to horror films. It definitely deserves that respect. But please like the video. That definitely helps out the channel. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and have that notification bell poked so you're notified anytime I drop a video, because you want to stay tuned to this Texas Chainsaw Massacre review series. Next, we're going to be talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, directed by Tobe Hooper, which I completely adore that film. That's going to be one that I love to talk about. But like I said, you got to stay tuned to the channel. But most importantly, y'all know what's up. Have a safe and happy day. Peace out.